My name is David Mercer, and when my wife finally came home from Europe, she stood on our porch with her suitcase tilted back, staring at a new deadbolt like it was a snake. The porch light buzzed over her head. Hannah's baby monitor crackled inside with that soft static that had become the soundtrack of my month. Lauren tried the R key twice. Metal scraped, nothing. David, her voice jumped sharp. "What did you do?" I kept the door chain on and slid a manila folder up against the glass. Court seal, date. A few lines in bold that didn't care about excuses. Her face drained so fast it looked unreal. "No," she whispered. "No, no, this can't be happening." Across the walk, Mrs. Delaney paused mid-watering her hanging baskets, mouth slightly open like she'd just seen a car wreck. Lauren pressed her palm to the door. "You can't lock me out of my own house." "You left your 1-year-old daughter," I said, calm, almost tired. "For a month, you didn't think there'd be a price." That's where people picture the story ending. Her gasp, the lock, the papers. But it started 4 weeks earlier in the short-term parking garage at Fort Wayne International Airport, with cold Indiana wind cutting through my jacket and Hannah crying in the back seat of my old Ford F-150. Lauren stood at the curb with a rolling suitcase and a new passport holder, tapping her foot like I was the one making her late. Her friends' college girlfriends, who still called each other roomie, were already inside for their Paris-Rome tour. Lauren had been talking about it for months like it was oxygen. Hannah was strapped into her car seat, cheeks pink, fists opening and closing. She could feel it. Babies always can. "Lauren," I said, keeping my voice low, "it doesn't have to be a whole month." She stared past me at the sliding doors. "David, don't start." "Start what?" I asked. "Asking my wife not to fly to Europe with her friends while I work full-time and take care of a baby by myself." She finally looked at me, and there was that hard shine in her eyes, the one that meant she'd already decided and was just waiting for my mouth to catch up. "She's your daughter too," she said. "That's not the point," I said. "The point is, you're acting like Hannah is a jacket you can hang up for 30 days. Lauren's jaw tightened. "You're making it sound like I'm abandoning her." "What do you call it?" I asked. Her shoulders lifted, then fell like she was reciting something she'd rehearsed in the car. "Oprah says women spend their whole lives pouring into everyone else until they wake up empty." I'm not waking up empty, David. I need space. I need to feel like me again. I stared at her. "We're quoting Oprah to justify ditching a toddler?" "Don't mock me," she snapped. "I'm a person, not just a wife and a mom." Hannah let out a scream that made two strangers turn around. I opened the back door and leaned in, resting my palm on my daughter's belly. She quieted to ragged hiccups the second she felt me. My throat burned. When I stood up, my breath came out white. "You want space, fine. But a month in Europe isn't space, it's running." Lauren's phone chimed. She glanced down and I saw the tiniest flicker of guilt get replaced by impatience. "It's with my friends," she said again, like that made it moral. I won't pretend our marriage had been perfect. I was 52, a maintenance supervisor at a tired apartment complex near Glenbrook Square. I fixed busted furnaces, leaky pipes and doors. People kicked in when they were drunk or mad. I liked things that stayed put and worked right. Lauren was 38, office coordinator at a dental practice, bright smile, quick laugh. The kind of woman who could make small talk with anyone. She also had that restless streak that never fully settled even after Hannah was born. Lately, she talked about identity like she'd misplaced it under the couch. That morning, she kissed Hannah's forehead too fast. "Be good for Daddy," she sang, too cheerful. Hannah grabbed Lauren's scarf with a death grip. For half a second, Lauren froze. I thought maybe she'll feel it. Maybe she'll stay. Then Lauren peeled Hannah's fingers off one by one and forced a smile. "See, she's fine." Hannah screamed again, louder. Lauren yanked her coat straight and lifted her suitcase. "I'll FaceTime every day." "Okay," I said. And when the time difference hits and Hannah's teething at 2 a.m, Lauren rolled her eyes. "You always do this. You make everything heavier than it has to be." "It is heavy," I said before I could stop myself. For a moment, the airport noise blurred the wheels on concrete, the distant announcement, the slam of a car door. All I heard was Hannah crying and my own heartbeat. Lauren stepped closer and touched my arm light as a stranger. "David, I just need a break. Don't punish me for needing a break." Punish? Like I was her dad, like she was asking permission instead of leaving responsibility. I wanted to beg. I wanted to yell. Instead, I swallowed everything because Hannah was watching me through wet lashes, and I refused to give her a father who falls apart in a parking garage. Lauren backed toward the doors. "Text me when you get home." Then she turned and walked away without looking back. I stood there until the sliding doors swallowed her up. Hannah's screaming softened into hiccups. I reached back and squeezed her tiny hand through the strap. "Okay," I whispered. "It's you and me, kiddo." On the drive home, the radio played something cheerful, like the world hadn't changed. My phone buzzed at a red light. A photo of the terminal, Lauren's caption finally breathing again. I stared at it long enough that the guy behind me honked. That was the first time the thought landed in my chest, not revenge yet. Just a clean, cold kind of truth. If she wanted 30 days like she didn't have a family, then I was going to stop pretending she did. The first night without Lauren, I didn't sleep so much as I took turns being awake. Hannah woke up at midnight, then again at 1:40, then again at 3:05 like she was punching a clock. Each time the baby monitor hissed to life with that crackly little burst of static, my stomach clenched before my eyes were even open. The apartment was quiet in that deep Indiana way. No sirens, no city roar, just the hum of the refrigerator and the furnace clicking on and off. The air smelled faintly like formula and warm laundry because I'd run the dryer twice trying to keep up with the bibs and onesies. By the third wake-up, I was standing in the kitchen in my socks bouncing a 1-year-old on my shoulder while the microwave clock glowed 3:12 a.m. like it was judging me. "Shh, honey," I whispered, pacing between the sink and the fridge. "Daddy's got you. Daddy's here." Hannah's face was hot against my neck, her little fist curling into my shirt, and I felt the sharp, ugly jealousy of my own wife. My wife was probably toasting champagne at some airport lounge while I was measuring life in ounces of formula and minutes of sleep. I didn't even know where the extra pacifiers were. Lauren always knew where everything was. I rummaged through drawers like a thief in my own house until I found one, washed it with shaking hands, and Hannah finally latched onto it with the kind of desperation that made my chest ache. That was the first thing I learned: you can't take a break from a baby. You can only leave someone else holding the weight. By day 3, my body started doing that thing it does when it's running on fumes. Everything felt too loud, too bright, too close. The clink of a spoon in a bowl made me flinch. The cheap apartment carpet under my feet felt itchy. The smell of sour milk on my sleeve followed me around like a fog. And I still had to go to work. I was maintenance supervisor at Maple Grove Apartments, a complex full of aging buildings, older tenants on fixed incomes, and young couples who thought rent included miracle repairs. My phone never stopped. Furnace out, toilet running, garbage disposal jammed, door won't lock. On Monday, I carried Hannah into the office with her diaper bag slung over my shoulder like I was hiking the Appalachian Trail. Ron Keller, my lead tech 61, the kind of man who smelled like coffee and motor oil no matter what he washed with, looked up from his clipboard. "Where's Lauren?" he asked. "Europe," I said, like it was a normal answer. Ron's eyebrows lifted. "With the baby." "With her friends," I said. Ron just stared at me. Then he glanced down at Hannah, who was chewing the strap of her sippy cup like it was a job. "Well," he said slowly, "that's something. I tried daycare. I tried babysitters. I tried calling 2 women from a church bulletin board, even though I haven't stepped foot in that church in years. Everything was booked overpriced or sounded like a scam. So I did what dads do when the world doesn't make room for them. I made it work anyway. I kept Hannah in the office for a few hours. Then I drove her to my sister's place across town and begged her to watch Hannah until lunch. Then I raced back to Maple Grove and plunged a toilet while my phone buzzed and my head pounded. By the end of the first week, I'd missed a maintenance meeting, mixed up 2 work orders, and forgot to sign a vendor invoice. My boss, Vince, pulled me aside in the parking lot. "David," he said, rubbing his forehead like I was a headache, "I'm sorry, Lauren's wherever, but I need you sharp." "I'm trying," I said. Vince nodded, not unkind. "Try harder. Tenants don't care about your personal life." I wanted to tell him tenants didn't care about Hannah's teething either, but I just nodded and swallowed it because pride doesn't pay rent. That night, Hannah ran a fever. Not a panic fever, but enough that I took her to urgent care on Coldwater Road. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. A couple of old men coughed into their sleeves. A little boy watched cartoons too loud on a phone. The nurse called Hannah's name, and I stood up so fast my knees creaked like an old staircase. I held my daughter while the doctor checked her ears and throat. Likely teething, the doctor said. Keep her hydrated. Alternate infant Tylenol if needed. You're doing fine, Dad. Fine. I walked out with Hannah asleep on my chest and almost cried in the parking lot because one stranger, had said I was doing fine. I texted Lauren Hannah had a fever, urgent care, teething. Lauren didn't respond for 6 hours. When she finally did, it was a selfie in front of some stone fountain. Her cheeks flushed a scarf around her neck, the city lights behind her. Caption: Paris is magic. She okay? 2 words about our child. 3 sentences about herself. That's when the anger started to change shape. It stopped being hot and became focused like a tool in my hand. I started noticing things. On Friday, I opened the bank app to check if my paycheck hit. The number in our joint account looked wrong, lower than it should have been. I clicked transactions and my thumb went still. 486.20 restaurant charge Para. $139 hotel deposit Rome. $320 ATM withdrawal converted from $300. Then another one. 247 Boutique Paris. I stared at those numbers like they were written in someone else's life. We weren't wealthy. We weren't broke. But we were the kind of family where I waited for coupons and Lauren complained about the price of eggs. We were the kind of couple who argued about a $70 dinner out. Now she was dropping nearly $500 on one meal while I was buying store-brand wipes. My chest tightened. I told myself not to be petty. I told myself a month meant some spending. I told myself she deserved something nice. Then I looked at my own receipts. 1834 infant Tylenol thermometer Pedialyte. 42.91 diapers wipes formula. 9.67 gas station coffee and a breakfast sandwich I barely tasted. I wasn't jealous of Paris. I was furious at the imbalance, at the way she had picked up the fun part of life and handed me the unpaid labor like it was my duty. At 2:50 a.m. one night, Hannah woke up screaming again, full body, red-faced, angry. I checked her diaper. Clean. I warmed a bottle. She refused. I rocked her until my arms trembled. Then I realized we were out of infant Motrin. I stared at the empty bottle on the counter like it was a personal insult. So I buckled Hannah into the car seat, threw a blanket over her, and drove to Walmart in the dark with the heater blasting and my eyes burning. The Walmart parking lot was a sea of lights and tired people. A truck idled near the cart return. Somewhere a shopping cart rattled over a crack in the pavement. Inside, the air was bright and cold, smelling like floor cleaner and cheap perfume. I pushed the cart one-handed while Hannah fussed, her cries echoing off the high ceiling. In the baby aisle, I stood there blinking at rows of medicine like I'd forgotten how to read. A woman in her 60s with gray hair and a puffy winter coat walked by, glanced at Hannah and slowed. "Rough night?" she asked softly. "You could say that," I muttered. She leaned in, looking at Hannah with that familiar older woman face seen everything still cares anyway. "You're doing good," she said, like she was telling me something important. "Babies don't remember who went on vacation. They remember who showed up." My throat tightened again. "Thanks," I managed. She nodded once and walked away with a carton of eggs and a loaf of bread, like she'd done her small piece of work for the world. Back in the car, Hannah finally fell asleep with her mouth open, a tear dried on her cheek. I sat in the Walmart parking lot for a minute, with the engine running, just listening to her breathe. My phone buzzed. Lauren had posted a photo, Eiffel Tower behind her wine glass raised. Her caption popped up through a friend's share. "Self-care is not selfish." I stared at it until the screen went dim. Then I opened my notes app and typed a date. Time, fact. Not because I wanted war, because I could feel something coming, and for the first time I wasn't going to be caught empty-handed. A few days later, Lauren sent a group shot from a cafe, her friends grinning, plates of pastries, steam rising from cappuccinos. I didn't even mean to zoom in, but my finger did it anyway, like my body already knew what my mind didn't want. In the window behind them, there was a reflection. A man. Tall, broad shoulders. Not one of the women. Could have been a stranger. Could have been a waiter. Could have been nothing. But my stomach dropped anyway. I didn't text her about it. I didn't accuse. I didn't feed that part of the story because I already had enough. I went back to the bank app and took screenshots. I went to Hannah's doctor appointments and kept the paperwork. I kept every receipt, every timestamp, every unanswered message. By the end of week 2, my notes weren't notes anymore. They were a record. And as I rocked Hannah to sleep that night, her warm little body heavy against my chest, I whispered the truth I'd been avoiding. Your mom wanted freedom, I murmured into her hair. So I'm going to make sure you're the one who's protected. The next morning, I woke up with Hannah's tiny hand wrapped around my finger like a set of handcuffs. Not the bad kind. The kind that says you don't get to drift, you don't get to find yourself. You either show up or you don't. Hannah babbled at the ceiling fan while I changed her diaper on the living room floor. My back ached. My eyes felt gritty. The coffee I poured tasted like nothing because exhaustion has a way of stealing flavor out of life. I drove her to my sister's place, kissed her forehead, and went to work with a knot in my stomach that didn't loosen all day. I kept thinking about those numbers in the bank account. 486.20, 1139 hour, 328 summer. And worse than the numbers was the silence between them, the gaps where my texts sat there unread, while my wife posed in front of history like she didn't have a child who still woke up crying for comfort. By lunch, I'd fixed a clogged garbage disposal, swapped out a busted thermostat, and talked a tenant down from calling the police because her neighbor's dog barked too much. Normal problems. Problems I could solve with a wrench and a calm voice. My own problem didn't come with screws. Ron Keller found me in the maintenance shop staring at my phone like it was going to start talking back. He leaned on the workbench, took one look at my face, and nodded toward the coffee pot. You look like hell. Feel like it too, I said. Ron poured himself a cup black as tar. He didn't ask how Europe was going. He didn't ask if Lauren missed Hannah. He'd been alive too long to ask questions with obvious answers. He just said, "You eating?" I shrugged. Whatever I can grab. He watched me for a beat, then asked, "She call much?" No, I said, and the word came out sharper than I meant it to. I rubbed my eyes. I mean, she FaceTimed twice. Mostly she talks about the buildings. Ron let out a low whistle through his teeth. That's cold. I didn't respond because if I responded, I might say something ugly, and I was trying hard not to become an ugly man. Ron took a slow sip of coffee. You know what I did wrong the first time I got divorced? I looked at him. Ron wasn't the kind of guy who volunteered personal stories unless there was a reason. What I asked. I waited, he said simply. I told myself she'd come around. I told myself if I stayed calm long enough, she'd start respecting me again. You know what she did while I waited? I didn't answer. He tapped a finger on the bench. She moved money. She rewrote the story. She got ahead of me. By the time I stopped being patient, I was standing in court with nothing but feelings and a mortgage. The words hit like a punch I didn't see coming. Ron reached into his wallet and pulled out a worn business card like it had been living there for years. He slid it across the bench. Patty Hargrove, Family Law, Mediation, Custody, Fort Wayne, in. I'm not telling you to go to war, Ron said. I'm telling you to stop acting like the only tool you're allowed to use is your pride. I stared at the card. I'm not trying to ruin her. Ron's face softened just a notch. Then don't. Just protect your kid. Courts don't reward good intentions. David, they reward paperwork. I put the card in my pocket like it was hot. All afternoon, I worked with my hands on autopilot while my brain ran circles. Part of me wanted to ignore it to prove I was stronger than the mess. Part of me was terrified of what it meant to call a lawyer. Like the minute I did it, I'd be crossing a line I couldn't uncross. That night after Hannah finally went down after the bath, the pajamas, the bottle, the long rocking while she blinked heavy-eyed at the lamp, I sat at the kitchen table with the baby monitor beside my elbow and Lauren's latest text on the screen. A photo of the Colosseum at sunset. Rome. Can you believe this place? No question about Hannah. No apology, just landmarks. I looked at that message for a long time, then opened my notes. Dates, times, charges, texts unanswered. It was all there. It was real. And I couldn't shake the thought that if Lauren came home angry, if she came home and tried to spin this like I was some incompetent old man who couldn't handle being a dad, then my calm wouldn't protect Hannah. Evidence would. I called Patty Hargrove the next morning from the parking lot of the UPS store because I didn't want to do it at work and I didn't want to do it at home where Hannah could sense my tension. A receptionist answered. I cleared my throat. My name's David Mercer. I need to talk to someone about custody, temporary custody. There was a pause, then a warm professional voice. Okay, Mr. Mercer, we have an opening at 2:30 today. Today I repeated like I hadn't expected things to move that fast. Is that okay? She asked. I swallowed. Yes. The office was in a low brick building that used to be something else, maybe a small insurance place, back when people still did business face to face. The waiting room smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. A tiny Christmas wreath hung crooked on the wall, even though it wasn't Christmas anymore, like nobody had the energy to fix it. Patty Hargrove came out and shook my hand like she'd been doing it her whole life. She was in her late 40s, maybe early 50s, with sharp eyes and the kind of calm that doesn't get rattled by tears. David, she said, come on back. Her office was neat without being fancy. 2 chairs, a filing cabinet, a framed photo of a golden retriever on her desk like a reminder that not everything in life is an argument. I sat down, hands clasped too tight. Patty looked at me over a legal pad. Tell me what's happening. So I did. Fort Wayne Airport, 1-month Europe trip. 1-year-old daughter left behind. The way Lauren rarely asked about Hannah. The bank charges, the screenshots, the urgent care visit, the 3 a.m. Walmart run, the exhaustion that felt like it had settled into my bones. I expected Patty to raise an eyebrow. I expected judgment. What I got was simple. She nodded and asked, do you have the dates of departure and the return flight? Yes, I said quickly and pulled them up like a kid with homework. She left on the 3rd. She's supposed to come back on the 2nd next month. Any written agreement about childcare while she's gone? Patty asked. No, I said, she just left. Patty's pen tapped once. Okay, and you've been the sole caregiver since then? Yes. She leaned back slightly. David, I want to be clear, the law doesn't punish people for going on a trip, but it does care about patterns of responsibility, especially with a child this young. I exhaled shaky. I'm not trying to make her look like a monster. Patty's voice stayed even. Then don't talk like she's a monster. Talk like she's absent. Those are different things in court. I swallowed hard. What can I do? Patty flipped her legal pad around so I could see the headings she'd written: custody, finances, communication. First, she said, pointing with her pen, temporary custody is a short-term order. Think of it like a legal seatbelt. It keeps the child secure while the court sorts out the bigger questions. I nodded slowly. Second, she continued, if you're still using a joint account and she's spending without limits, you need to separate your income. That doesn't mean you're stealing. It means you're making sure Hannah's basics are covered. My throat tightened. Is that going to make me look petty? Patty's eyes held mine. It's not petty to pay for diapers. It's irresponsible not to. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Patty's tone softened just a hair. The hardest part for men like you is you think staying quiet is noble. Sometimes it is, but silence doesn't show up on a judge's desk. Paper does. I glanced down at my folder of screenshots. My hands were still trembling a little. So, what does the court need? Facts, Patty said. Not character attacks, not speeches. Facts. She started listing them steady as a metronome. Receipts for childcare, medical visit supplies. A log of who has cared for Hannah each day. Copies of messages showing effort to communicate. Bank statements showing withdrawals and charges. Then she looked at me and asked the question I'd been avoiding. David, she said carefully, when your wife comes home, do you believe she's going to take responsibility, or do you believe she's going to get angry? I pictured Lauren's face at the airport, that hard shine, the way she said punish like she was already preparing a story where she was the victim. I didn't answer right away. Finally, I said, I think she's going to be furious that I didn't just wait. Patty nodded like she'd heard that 1,000 times. Then we prepare for that. Quietly, legally. My mouth went dry. What does that mean? It means Patty said we file for temporary custody before she comes back. It means we stop letting her set the terms. It means you keep your communications short, polite, and documented. And it means if she shows up and tries to force her way into a situation that isn't safe or stable. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I stared at the legal pad, my vision blurring for a second. Not from tears, just the weight of it. I thought of Hannah asleep in her crib. Thought of her small, warm body, the way she calmed the second she felt my hand on her back. Thought of how she trusted me without knowing anything about bank accounts or court orders. My voice came out rough. I never thought I'd be doing this. Patty's gaze didn't waver. Most decent people don't, David. That's why they lose. When I left Patty's office, the sky was the color of dirty snow. My truck smelled like stale coffee and baby wipes. I sat behind the steering wheel for a full minute, staring at the business card on my passenger seat. Then I opened my phone and looked at Lauren's last message again. Rome, can you believe this place? My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed Hannah's doing okay. She had a fever last week. I took her to urgent care. Please call when you can. Then I deleted everything except one line. Hannah's asleep. Hope you're safe. Short, polite, documented. And as I started the engine, one thought settled in my gut with a strange, steady calm. I wasn't building a case to hurt my wife. I was building a wall around my daughter. After that meeting with Patty, my life turned into a series of quiet, unglamorous moves, like a man fixing a roof before the storm hits, knowing nobody will clap when the house stays dry. I didn't feel heroic, I felt tired. The next day I woke up to Hannah whimpering through the baby monitor, that soft crackle followed by her little voice, half cry, half complaint. The room smelled like baby lotion and the faint sourness of formula that had dried on my sleeve overnight. I scooped her up, kissed her warm forehead, and whispered, "We're okay. We're okay." But my hands were already thinking in lists. Diapers, daycare, paperwork, bank accounts, work orders, receipts. I started small because small was all I could handle. I went to the credit union on my lunch break, the one I'd driven past 1,000 times without ever really seeing it. The lobby smelled like carpet shampoo and peppermint from a bowl of candy on the counter. A teller with reading glasses perched on her nose smiled like she recognized the look in my face. "New account?" she asked. "Yes," I said, voice low. "Just for my paycheck." She nodded like she didn't need the story. "We can do that." 15 minutes later, I had routing numbers on a little slip of paper and a strange feeling in my stomach, half relief, half guilt. Like I was cheating on something, even though all I was doing was making sure my daughter didn't end up short on formula because someone wanted gelato in Rome. That night after Hannah fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with the baby monitor beside my elbow and started sorting receipts into piles. The paper smelled dusty and sharp like ink and old wallets. Urgent care, Walmart, gas, baby Tylenol, diapers, wipes. I opened a cheap spiral notebook and wrote it all down in block letters the way Patty had told me. Date, time, what happened, cost, who was present. It felt cold writing my marriage like a report. But every time I hesitated, I looked toward Hannah's room and remembered how she'd cried for her mother in the first week. Not the word mom, not yet. Just that searching sound babies make when they expect someone to show up. So I kept writing. Lauren kept sending messages like nothing was wrong. A photo of a cobblestone street. I could live here forever. A selfie with her friend's cheeks flushed. This is healing. At 1:07 a.m. one night while I was standing barefoot in the kitchen warming a bottle, my phone buzzed with a picture of the Eiffel Tower lit up like a birthday candle. Caption, "Self-care is not selfish." I stood there staring at it while the bottle warmer hummed and Hannah cried down the hall. "I swear to God," I muttered to nobody, "if you ever say that out loud in this house again." Then I stopped myself. Anger was easy. I could drown in anger. What I needed was control. The next week I joined a Facebook group called Fort Wayne Dads. It felt ridiculous, like admitting defeat. But I'd learned something over the last 2 weeks: pride doesn't burp a baby. The group was mostly pictures of kids at parks and dads asking questions they were embarrassed to ask out loud. How do you get a toddler to eat anything that isn't crackers? Best diaper rash cream. Any daycares with openings? I posted once late at night, thumb hovering over the screen like it weighed 100 pounds. Wife out of town, solo with a 1-year-old. Any tips for sleep? Within minutes, replies came in from men I'd never met. White noise, keep the room cool. Don't skip the bedtime routine, same order every night. Hang in there, brother, it gets easier. One guy wrote, "You're not failing, you're learning." I sat back in my chair and let that sink in. The house was quiet except for the furnace ticking and the baby monitor's soft static. For the first time in days, I didn't feel completely alone. I started learning other things too, like how to cook something other than scrambled eggs without setting off the smoke alarm. I watched a YouTube video on meatloaf at midnight with the sound down low. Hannah asleep, the phone screen glowing blue in my face. The guy in the video talked like it was easy. "It's just ground beef, breadcrumbs, ketchup." I snorted softly. I used to think I was Superman, I whispered to myself, and now I'm a super dad who celebrates not burning dinner. It was a dark kind of funny, but it kept me from cracking. Work, though, didn't care that I was becoming a dad in real time. On a Wednesday afternoon, I was halfway through replacing a water heater when my phone rang. Daycare, one of the few places that had finally agreed to take Hannah part-time, was on the line. "Mr. Mercer," the woman said, "Hannah's running a temperature. You need to pick her up." I glanced at the half-drained tank tools spread on the floor, tenant, watching me like I was performing surgery. "I'm in the middle of something," I said, then hated myself for saying it. "She needs you," the woman said, firm but not cruel. "I'm on my way," I said. I drove like my heart was outside my body. The world looked too sharp gray, sky bare, trees, brake lights glowing red like warnings. When I got there, Hannah was flushed and clingy eyes watery. The second she saw me, she reached out both arms with that desperate little grab that makes a man feel like the most important thing on earth. I scooped her up and whispered, "Daddy's here," like it was a promise I could never break. I was back at Maple Grove an hour later with Hannah's fever meds in my pocket and a deadline in my face. Vince was waiting for me in the hallway, arms crossed. "Again," he said. "I didn't have a choice," I answered, trying to keep my voice level. Vince looked past me at Hannah, then back at me. "David, I've got tenants screaming, vendors waiting. You can't keep disappearing." "Then tell me what you want me to do," I snapped before I could stop it. "Leave her in the lobby with a juice box and a prayer?" His jaw tightened. For a second, I thought I'd just lost my job right there under fluorescent lights. Then Vince exhaled long and hard. "Get it together," he said, quieter. "I'm not heartless, but I can't run this place with one hand." I nodded, throat tight. "I'm trying." That night, when the house was finally still, I sent Patty a photo of my notebook pages and a folder of bank screenshots. My hands shook from exhaustion as I typed. I felt like I was turning in evidence against my own life. Patty called me the next morning. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "David, I filed the motion for temporary custody," she said. "We should have an order soon. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Short texts. Keep your log. No drama." I swallowed. "What about the house?" "Not yet," she said. "Don't do anything that looks impulsive. Wait until we have the temporary order in hand." I stared at the wall, listening to Hannah babble on her playmat. "Lauren comes back soon," I said. "Yes," Patty replied, "and that's why you need to stay steady. If she comes home angry, let her be angry. You be prepared." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a message from Lauren. A picture of her feet on a beach somewhere. Toes in sand, a wine glass in frame like a trophy. Caption: "Last night. Can't wait to sleep in my own bed tomorrow." I felt something twist in my gut, part rage, part relief. Tomorrow. I looked at Hannah, who was chewing on a rubber giraffe and smiling at nothing. "Okay," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "Let's do this right." The custody order showed up the morning Lauren was due to land. Plain white envelope. Court seal. No drama, just paper that weighed more than any argument we'd ever had. Hannah sat in her high chair, smearing banana across the tray, humming to herself. I stood at the counter and read the first page twice because my eyes didn't trust what they saw. Temporary custody granted. Primary placement with father. Exclusive use of the residence for the child's stability pending hearing. My hands went cold, then they started shaking. I called Patty. "It's here," I said. "Good," she replied. "Stay calm. Don't argue on the porch. If she escalates, you call non-emergency. Let the paper do the talking." "What about the locks?" "With that order, yes," Patty said. "Today, and keep it clean, no taunting." I hung up and looked at Hannah's sticky face. "Okay," I whispered. "Seatbelt on." By noon, the deadbolt was changed. Drill whirring, metal clicking into place. 2 new keys in my palm that felt heavier than they should. I set the manila folder on the kitchen table, court order. On top, my log, behind it, receipts clipped neat. Not a weapon, just a fire extinguisher. All afternoon, the house felt too quiet. The furnace kicked on. The baby monitor hissed. Hannah babbled to her stuffed bear like she was giving it a sermon. At 6:12 p.m., headlights washed across the living room wall. A rideshare pulled into the drive. Trunk popped. Then I heard the hard clatter of suitcase wheels on old porch boards. I lifted Hannah onto my hip and stood where I could see the door glass. Lauren stepped up like she expected applause. Long coat, scarf, face still pink from travel. She slid our old key into the new deadbolt. Scrape. Nothing. She tried again, harder. Her smile faded, then vanished. Then she saw me through the glass. David, she called, bright with confusion. Why isn't it working? I didn't open the door. I kept the chain on. Lauren's eyes flicked to the chain. Her mouth open. Are you serious? Lauren, I said, calm and tired. You can't walk back in like nothing happened. She laughed once sharp. Nothing happened. I went on a trip. You knew. I knew you were leaving, I said. I didn't know you'd leave our daughter like she was luggage. Hannah stirred at the sound of Lauren's voice. She blinked, then tucked her face against my shoulder. Lauren's smile cracked. Open the door. Read this, I said. I slid the folder up against the glass so she could see the court seal and the date. Her eyes dropped. Her hand froze on the knob. What is that? She whispered. Paper, I said. The kind that doesn't care about excuses. Lauren leaned in, reading through the window like she could bully the words into changing. Her lips moved, her brows pulled tight. Then the blood drained out of her face. No, she breathed. She scanned again faster. Her breathing got loud enough that I could hear it. No, no, her voice cracked. This can't be happening. Across the walkway, Mrs. Delaney paused mid-step, eyes wide like she just heard a crash. Lauren snapped her head up at me. You went to court. I went to protect Hannah, I said. You're punishing me. I'm not your dad, I said. I'm Hannah's. Lauren's voice climbed. I needed a break, I FaceTimed. You sent selfies, I replied. You didn't ask about her fever until after urgent care. Her face twitched like she was searching for the right mask. David, I didn't realize it was that hard, she said, suddenly soft. I'm sorry, okay? Just let me in. Let me hold her. For half a second, I wanted to. Not for Lauren, for the picture of a family I'd been clinging to. Then I remembered 3 a.m. at Walmart and Hannah crying into my shirt. Not like this, I said. Lauren's softness snapped back into anger. Oh my God, you're loving this. Super dad with his little notebook. It's not a notebook, I said. It's a record. Lauren's eyes narrowed. So this is about money. It's about responsibility, I said. Money's just where your choices left fingerprints. I lifted the folder and held up the bank screenshots against the glass. $486.20, $1.139, $328. Then the urgent care receipt, then my log with dates and times. I didn't speak louder. I didn't have to. Lauren stared, swallowing hard. That's controlling, she hissed. You're spying on me. It's our account, I said, and our child. She grabbed the doorknob and rattled it. The chain snapped taut. Hannah startled and let out a small cry. Don't, I warned. Lauren slapped the glass with her palm. You can't lock me out of my own house. The court says I can, I said for Hannah. She pulled out her phone with shaking fingers. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, I said. Ask them to read the order. 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up slow. Tires crunching gravel. Porch light buzzing. Mrs. Delaney hovering like a nervous angel. The officer walked up the steps, glanced at Lauren, then at me through the glass. Sir, he called, can we talk? I opened the door just enough for the chain to hold. Cold air rushed in, carrying the sharp smell of airport and perfume. Yes, officer. Paperwork, he asked. I handed him the folder through the gap. He read under the porch light. The world went quiet except for Hannah's soft breathing and the baby monitor's faint hiss from inside. The officer looked up at Lauren. Ma'am, this is a temporary custody order. It also grants him exclusive use of the residence pending a hearing. Lauren's face went slack. No. It's valid, the officer said. If you want to change it, you do it in court, not on a porch. I'm her mother, Lauren said, voice thin. Then follow the order, the officer replied. You can request parenting time through the proper process. Lauren turned to me, eyes wet. You planned this, she whispered. I met her stare. You gave me 30 days to learn. I couldn't wait for you to do the right thing. Her jaw clenched. She grabbed her suitcase handle and dragged it down the steps wheels, clacking each sound a small humiliation. At the curb, she stopped and looked back once. Hannah's eyes were open now, watching over my shoulder, quiet, steady. Lauren's mouth trembled. Then she whispered it again like a prayer that didn't work. No, this can't be happening. The rideshare trunk shut. The car pulled away. Red taillights faded into the winter dark. I stood there a moment with the door still chained, my daughter warm against me. Then I closed the door, slid the bolt, and breathed like the air inside my own home finally belonged to us. Not anger. Protection. 3 days after that porch scene, My hands still reached for the baby monitor before my eyes were even open. That soft hiss, that little crackle of static, had become my morning newspaper. If it was quiet, I could breathe. If it wasn't, I was already moving. Hannah slept through the night for the first time in weeks on the fourth night. I didn't celebrate. I just lay there in the dark with my heart still racing, like my body didn't believe peace was allowed yet. The house smelled like clean laundry and the faint cinnamon of the oatmeal I'd burned that morning, because apparently I could rebuild a water heater in 30 minutes, but still couldn't cook like a normal adult. The kitchen light buzzed the same way the porch light did, and I remember thinking I should replace that bulb. Like replacing a bulb would fix everything. I went to work that Monday and half the complex seemed to know. Not because I told anyone, because small towns and apartment buildings run on the same fuel whispers. Vince didn't say a word. He just tossed me a work order and muttered pipe leak in 3B. Ron Keller caught my eye in the hallway and gave me a single nod. No speech, no, I told you so. Just that look men give each other when they recognize a hard choice. Later in the maintenance shop, Ron poured coffee and said, "How'd she take it?" I exhaled through my nose like the floor dropped out from under her. Ron sipped. "Good." "Not good," I corrected, surprising myself. "Just necessary." Ron looked at me a second longer, then shrugged. Necessary is the word people use when they don't want to admit they did the right thing. I didn't answer because my throat tightened. The right thing can still feel like grief. Lauren didn't disappear after that night. She texted short at first, then longer, then angry again when short didn't work. At 9:14 p.m., she wrote, "I can't believe you embarrassed me like that." At 9:16, "I'm her mother." At 9:18, "You're acting like a monster." I stared at the screen while Hannah slept, her tiny chest rising and falling. The urge to write a paragraph rose in my fingers like a reflex. I wanted to explain everything. I wanted to defend myself like I was on trial in my own kitchen. But Patty's voice came back, facts, short, calm. So I typed one sentence. "Please communicate through Patty Hargrove's office per the order." Then I set my phone face down and went back to folding tiny socks that looked like they belonged to a doll. 2 days later, we had our first exchange under the new schedule. Patty arranged it at a public place, nothing dramatic, just a neutral handoff at the Fort Wayne Public Library parking lot, where there were cameras and witnesses and no room for screaming. The sky was low and gray. The air smelled like cold concrete and exhaust. Hannah was in her puffy coat with little bear ears on the hood. She kept tugging at my collar, babbling, trying to eat the zipper. Lauren pulled in 10 minutes early, like she wanted control back in any form she could grab. She got out of the car with her arms already open, eyes bright with nerves. When she saw Hannah in my arms, something softened in her face, real, not staged. For a second, I saw the woman I married, the one who used to laugh at the county fair and dance in our kitchen while I pretended I didn't like it. "Hi, baby," Lauren whispered, voice shaking. Hannah stared at her. Then she leaned her head into my shoulder. Lauren's mouth tightened. She doesn't recognize me. My chest pinched, but I didn't let it show. "She's one," I said. "She recognizes who's here." Lauren flinched like I'd slapped her. We stood there in that quiet parking lot while other people walked past carrying books and coffee, like their lives were normal. Lauren reached for Hannah, slowly, cautious now. I let Hannah go, but I stayed close. Not because I wanted to punish Lauren, because Hannah's body tensed and my job was to keep her steady. Lauren held her like she was trying to memorize her weight. Hannah fussed, then calmed when Lauren started humming. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't nothing either. Lauren looked up at me, eyes wet. "I didn't think—" Her voice broke. "I didn't think you'd do this." "I didn't think I'd have to," I said. She swallowed. "I just wanted to feel young again." That word young hit me harder than anger ever did, because I understood it in a way. Not the leaving part, but the panic of time moving too fast. The feeling that your life got assigned to you and you didn't get a say. I stared at my hands, rough and cracked from work. "I'm 52, I said quietly. "You think I don't feel time?" Lauren looked down at Hannah. "I wasn't trying to hurt her. I believe you," I said, "and I meant it. But you still did." Lauren's shoulders sagged. "Is there any way I can fix this?" That was the moment I could have gone for blood. I could have brought up the money again. The pictures, the reflection of the man in the cafe window. I could have demanded confessions and watched her squirm. Instead, I heard myself say, "Show up." Lauren blinked. Not with souvenirs, I continued. Not with speeches. Show up when it's boring, when it's inconvenient, when nobody's taking pictures. Lauren nodded slowly like she'd never heard responsibility said out loud before. Patty had told me something else during one of our phone calls. The court can't force someone to be a good parent. It can only set boundaries around the child so the child doesn't get crushed by someone else's choices. That's what my revenge really was. Not humiliation, not cruelty. Boundaries. In the weeks that followed, things got quieter. Not easy. Quieter. Lauren tried to push back at first. She asked for extra time, then got upset when I said it had to go through the schedule. She sent long messages full of emotion. I answered with short sentences full of facts. She hated it, I could tell. But something changed when she realized the paper wasn't going away. She started showing up on time. She started asking specific questions: what Hannah ate, what time she napped, what her doctor said about her teething. Not glamorous questions, parenting questions. One night, Lauren even texted, "I bought diapers. Which size is she in now?" I stared at that message for a long moment, then let out a tired laugh in my empty kitchen. Progress, I muttered to myself. We're celebrating diapers. The hearing came and went without fireworks. Patty did what she does, calm, steady, prepared. Lauren's attorney tried to make me look controlling. Patty slid my log across the table like it was the simplest thing in the world. "This is not control," Patty said. "This is caregiving." The judge didn't care about Lauren's photos or captions. The judge cared about Hannah's stability. I walked out with the arrangement extended, and the weirdest part wasn't the relief. It was the sadness. Because the truth was, I didn't win a prize. I just stopped losing ground. A month later, I took Hannah to Glenbrook Square and let her toddle around the little play area in the middle while I sipped coffee that was way too hot. Old couples walked past holding hands. A grandfather sat on a bench laughing while his grandkid tried to climb his knee. I watched Hannah wobble on her feet, determined, stubborn as a Mercer. She fell onto her diapered bottom, looked up at me and grinned, like falling was just part of the plan. I realized something then that I wish I'd learned earlier. Responsibility doesn't make you smaller. It makes you real. And people who run from responsibility don't come back refreshed. They come back shocked that the world kept moving without them. Hannah will never remember the month her mother left. She won't remember the 3 a.m. Walmart run, or the urgent care waiting room, or the porch light buzzing while papers changed our lives. But I will. I'll remember how close I came to begging a woman to love us properly. And I'll remember the day I stopped begging and started building. So if you're listening to this and it feels familiar, if you've ever been the one holding the responsibility while someone else chased freedom, I want you to hear me clearly. Sometimes the quiet one isn't weak. He's just done talking. If this story hit you in the gut, share it with someone who knows what it means to stay. And if you want more stories like this, real ones, grounded ones, stick around, subscribe, and come back tomorrow. You're not alone in this.